with Dia de los Muertos just around the
Mhm.
corner, I thought it'd be fun to explore this tradition.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so we're going to be diving deep into a blog post today from Director's Corner all about respectfully celebrating Dia de los Muertos.
Okay.
Um, and I think this is going to be especially relevant for families who may have experienced loss or anyone who's just, curious about this really unique celebration.
For sure.
So, um, I think what's really interesting about Dia de los Muertos is it's not really how we typically view, death and mourning.
Right. It's really about like welcoming back
Yeah.
the spirits of loved ones.
That's exactly what the blog post emphasizes. It's
Yeah.
like creating this warm and inviting atmosphere for those spirits to kind of return and, celebrate.
Yeah. It's about continuing that bond with those who are no longer physically present.
And at the heart of this celebration is the ofrenda.
Yes. The ofrenda. It's like this intricately crafted altar. It's a beacon to guide those spirits home.
I love that.
Yeah. And, they believe that the spirits can actually interact with the offerings.
Oh, wow.
So there's a real sense of love and care put into creating them.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Now, the blog post goes into some pretty fascinating details about the structure of the ofrenda.
Mhm.
And it's often multi-tiered
Uh,
with each level dedicated to, different categories of the departed.
right. The top tier is often for the religious figures,
Okay.
to provide that spiritual anchor. And then you have a tier for the Los Angelitos, the children who have passed.
Okay.
And they're adorned with toys and candies and things that would have brought them joy.
Oh, it's so sweet.
And then the lower tiers are dedicated to the adult relatives.
So it's like creating a space where everybody's welcome and nobody feels left out.
Exactly. And then the offerings themselves also play a really crucial role
Oh, for sure.
in making those spirits feel welcome.
So what kinds of offerings are we talking about here? What would entice a spirit to return?
Well, a staple is pan de muerto,
Okay.
the bread of the dead. So it's a sweet bread, often decorated with bone shaped decorations
Okay.
and infused with flavors like anise or orange blossom.
It's interesting how, something like bone-shaped bread can be part of a joyous celebration.
Right. It really speaks to how the holiday views death as just a natural part of life.
Okay.
But of course, no ofrenda would be complete without the deceased's favorite foods and drinks.
Of course.
That personal touch is so important.
Yeah, it's like triggering those sense memories,
Exactly.
reminding them of what they love.
Yeah, and the cempasúchil, the marigolds.
Okay.
Their vibrant color and scent are believed to guide the spirits home.
Oh, wow. So they act like a pathway.
Exactly.
So we've got food flowers. Is there anything else that goes on the ofrenda?
Okay, yeah, personal items as
The
well.
blog post mentioned that.
Cherished possessions,
Wow.
photographs, maybe a handmade craft, a tool that represents their profession.
So it's like a real like tapestry of their life.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the ofrenda set up.
hmm
The spirits are feeling welcome. What happens next?
Well, this is where the celebration extends beyond the home and goes into the community.
Okay.
Families visit cemeteries not to mourn, but to reunite with their loved ones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they meticulously clean and decorate the graves
The blog post mentioned that.
with marigolds and candles and offerings,
Yeah.
almost like an extension of the ofrenda itself.
Wow.
And they even hold vigils at the cemetery.
That's incredible.
Yeah, they'll spend the entire night sharing stories, singing songs, just basking in the presence of their loved ones.
Wow. So it's not a somber place at all.
No, not at all.
It's about remembering.
Yes, celebrating the lives lived.
That's beautiful. And this celebration continues with food and storytelling.
Right. Central elements of Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah, the blog post talks about mole and tamales
Yes.
and setting a place at the table for the departed.
It's a way to keep those memories alive,
Yeah.
passing them down through generations,
So powerful.
making sure that those who have passed remain an integral part of the family.
It's a beautiful way to honor their legacy.
It is. And, this connection to those who have passed is woven into the very fabric of Dia de los Muertos.
Absolutely. From the colors to the symbols.
Yeah, speaking of symbols.
The blog post mentions skulls and skeletons.
Right. And, I understand that first glance that might seem a bit off putting,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember the context.
Okay.
They're not meant to be morbid or scary. They're often depicted playfully, whimsically, even.
Okay.
It's a reminder that death is a natural part of life.
It's about embracing the cycle of life and death.
Exactly.
What about the monarch butterflies?
Oh, yes. The belief is that they carry the spirits back to the world of the living,
Oh, wow.
and their arrival often coincides with Dia de los Muertos.
It's like nature itself is participating.
Isn't that a beautiful thought?
That is We've covered so much: the Ofrenda cemetery visits, the food, the stories, the symbols. This deep dive is really painting a vibrant picture of this holiday.
It is, and it's important to remember that we're kind of exploring this tradition from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
But, for many, it's deeply personal.
Right. It's rooted in a rich cultural history,
Exactly.
which brings us to cultural sensitivity.
Yes, approaching Dia de los Muertos with respect and understanding is paramount.
For sure, especially for those unfamiliar with its nuances.
Yes, the blog post really urges everyone to learn more about the origins of the holiday, its evolution, and the significance behind its elements.
Right. It's about appreciating the cultural depth.
Exactly, not just appropriating the aesthetics.
Right. And this respect extends to how we participate in celebrations
Yes,
and even how we purchase items for the ofrenda.
absolutely.
So supporting Mexican artisans and businesses
Yes, making sure we're using authentic pieces,
and contributing to the preservation of these traditions.
supporting local
It's
communities.
about being mindful consumers.
Exactly. And, this mindfulness applies to actions that might seem harmless,
Right.
like dressing up as a Day of the Dead character.
The blog post mentioned the Katrinas.
Yes, those elegantly dressed skeletons, while they're captivating. It's crucial to remember that they're deeply symbolic
Right.
and shouldn't be reduced to costumes,
So appreciating the artistry.
but within their cultural
It's
context.
about drawing that line between appreciation and appropriation.
Exactly. And even something as simple as taking pictures, especially in cemeteries, requires that sensitivity and respect.
Oh, for sure.
Always seek permission before photographing individuals or families and be mindful of, disrupting their personal moments.
It comes back to respecting the traditions to the people
Yeah.
and the holiday itself.
Yes.
Reading through this blog post, I keep coming back to the idea that Dia de los Muertos isn't just a day, it's a mindset.
Right. It's a way of looking at life and death.
Yes, it's challenging us to think about death not as an end, but as a transition,
It is.
to cherish the memories and find joy in celebrating their lives.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that our connection to loved ones transcends the physical realm.
Beautifully put. And, we've explored the heart of this holiday, the ofrendas, the cemeteries, the food, the stories, the sensitivity.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to revisit something you mentioned earlier about how Dia de los Muertos encourages us to view death differently.
Yeah, it invites us to see death not as something to be feared, but as a natural part of life.
Right. And it makes me wonder, how can we carry that perspective, that sense of peace and acceptance with us throughout the year, not just during the holiday?
That's a profound question.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the real gift of Dia de los Muertos,
What do you mean?
a chance to reframe our relationship with death and find ways to honor and celebrate the lives of those we love.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
It's a gift that extends far beyond the holiday itself.
It does.
Well, I think we've given our listener a lot to ponder today.
We have.
But before we move on, I have one last thought.
Okay.
We've talked about the ofrendas, the food, the stories,
Yes.
but what if we took a moment each day to create our own personal ofrenda in our hearts?
Oh,
A space to remember to honor, to celebrate the lives of those we love, both present and departed.
okay.
How would that change our perspective?
That's a beautiful thought.
How would that change our lives?
A powerful way to keep those we love close,
Precisely.
even when they're no longer physically with us.
Exactly.
Yeah. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Dia de los Muertos.
We have. Thank you, dear listener, for joining us on this journey. I hope you learned something new and maybe even discovered a new way to think about remembering and celebrating those who've passed.
It's been a pleasure exploring this tradition with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listener, thank you for sharing your curiosity about this beautiful and meaningful holiday. We hope you've come away with a deeper understanding of Dia de los Muertos and a new appreciation for the way it honors life and death.
And maybe even a little inspiration to find your own ways to remember and celebrate those you love.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.